Good morning. I'm Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission, Director of the Department of City Planning. Welcome to today's public meeting of July 12th, 2023. We will kick things off today with several votes before moving on to public hearings. First up, the Commission will vote on the Linden Street Historic District in Bushwick, which would designate a group of 32 brick and brownstone row houses constructed around the end of the 19th century. Moving to downtown Brooklyn, we'll vote on a zoning authorization to permit a curb cut for a loading dock for 589 Fulton Street, an as-of-right mixed-use tower in downtown Brooklyn with around 590 homes, of which 175 would be income restricted. Our next vote is on the NYC Independent Budget Office's plan to acquire new office space at 80 Pine Street to accommodate its 30 full-time employees. The Commission will then move to what is likely the most notable vote for today on the Madison Square Garden special permit and the Department of City Planning's text amendment to ensure that the arena is compatible with Penn Station via improvements to the public realm and loading operations. I'll have more to say about that during the vote. In Douglas and Queens, the Commission will then vote on a height waiver to construct two buildings, the first of which would bring around 125 homes, around 35 income restricted, and medical offices. the second a long-term care facility with over 200 beds. From there, several Staten Island applications for local homeowners will vote on an authorization at 94 Dalemere Road in Tote Hill to facilitate a single-family home with an in-ground swimming pool. Then we'll take on zoning lot subdivisions at 17, 19, and 23 Altman Avenue in Lighthouse Hill, 20 Sideman Avenue in Eltingville, and 507 Richard Avenue in Butler Manor. After the votes, we will move on to public hearings, starting with a plan to acquire office space for the Department of Health at 532 Fulton Street in downtown Brooklyn, less than a block from the 2, 3, 4, 5B, Q, and R trains. This office would service 55 staff and over 10,000 clients. Moving a few blocks over to Borum Hill, Commission will invite the public to testify on a follow-up action to waive all of the required parking for the previously approved 280 Bergen Street, which will allow 300 homes, 80 of which would be income restricted. And also in Brooklyn, we'll hold a hearing on an application by a Sheep's Head Bay restaurant at 2761 Plum 2nd Street. The owner there is looking to continue operating the eatery without the need to go to the Board of Standards and Appeals for a renewal every 5 years. Then on to 244 East 106th Street, which is a proposal by the city's Department of Housing, Preservation, and Development to build 32 income-restricted homes in East Harlem as part of Share NYC. In Astoria, we will be looking at and hearing from the public on 4218 31st Avenue, a proposed development that would create 30 homes, 12 income-restricted, with ground floor retail and 25 bike spaces. And the last two relate first to a commercial overlay in a residential district so that an existing building at 125 Graves Lane can convert from a community facility to commercial. And last, 1460 to 1480 Sheridan Boulevard, 3 buildings with 970 units intended to be income-restricted homes over an acre of open space and an acre of open public space along the Bronx River in Crotona Park East, next to Starlight Park, near multiple train stations. So it is a busy day here at the City Planning Commission. Sarah, let us get started, and the floor is yours.
Good morning. This is a City Planning Commission public meeting held remotely through the NYC Engage portal and in person in the CPC Hearing Room, 120 Broadway, Lower Concourse. Today is Wednesday, July 12th, 2023. I will now call the roll. Chair Gorodnick.
Here.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Present.
Commissioner Bozark is absent. Commissioner Cerullo.
Here.
Commissioner Krall, I believe we have on Zoom.
Correct.
Commissioner Duick.
Here.
Commissioner Gold.
Here.
Commissioner Goodrich is absent. Commissioner Kermani. Here. Commissioner Marin is on Zoom, I believe.
Yes, good morning.
Commissioner Osorio is absent. Commissioner Ramprashad.
Here.
A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the public meeting of Wednesday, June 28, 2023.
Thank you very much. I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 28th. Is there a second? Commissioner Ramprashad, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
nay. Minutes are approved. Thank you.
Scheduling. Calendar number 1. We have a resolution for adoption scheduling Wednesday, July 26, 2023 for a public hearing to be held in person in the CPC Hearing Room, 120 Broadway, and remotely through the NYC Engage portal.
Great. I make a motion to approve the resolutions. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. The resolution is adopted.
The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 5. Borough Brooklyn, calendar number 2, Linden Street Historic District, CD4, N230353HKK, and the matter of a communication from the Landmarks Preservation Commission regarding a designation report concerning the Linden Street Historic District. For adoption of calendar number 2 for referral to the City Council. Chair Gorodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Krall.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani. Yes. Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 2 has been adopted. Borough of Brooklyn. Calendar number 3, 589 Fulton Street, curb cut authorization, CD2, N230237ZAK, in the matter of an application for the grant of an authorization concerning 589 Fulton Street curb cut. For the adoption of calendar number 3, Chair Gorodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Medin.
Yes.
Commissioner Krall, I believe I skipped you. Apologies.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 3 has been adopted. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 4, 80 Pine Street IBO office space, CD1 N230279PXM, as a matter of an application for a notice of intent to acquire office space concerning 80 Pine Street IBO office space. For a favorable report on calendar number 4, Chair Gorodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Krall.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Medin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 4. Borough of Manhattan, calendar numbers 5 and 6. Madison Square Garden special permit. CD5, calendar number 5, C230238ZSM, Madison Square Garden special permit. Calendar number 6, N230240ZRM, Arena text amendment. And the matter of applications for a special permit concerning Madison Square Garden special permit and a zoning text amendment concerning Arena text amendment. For favorable reports as modified on calendar number 5, Madison Square Garden special permit, and calendar number 6, Arena text amendment, Chair Gorodnick.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Before I vote on this Madison Square Garden special permit and the zoning text amendment, I just wanted to take a moment and look back at what we have accomplished over the past 5 months. Over the course of this process, we have secured a number of important commitments from Madison Square Garden that will make a real difference to New Yorkers. First, the department's text amendment brings the standards that MSG has to meet into the 21st century. The work of department staff has focused our attention on the things that truly matter, such as loading, public realm, and how MSG relates to Penn Station. I commend the department on advancing this text amendment and believe it will do a lot to make MSG a better neighbor. MSG has committed to improving the public realm around the arena, creating a civic space that New Yorkers can be proud of with improved entrances and glass canopies, better signage, planters, and artwork, and more. They've also committed to getting loading operations off of 33rd Street, clearing up entrances to the arena and moving unnecessary security barriers, and working with DOT on a transportation management plan for their loading operations. And importantly, MSG has committed in writing to collaborate with the MTA, Amtrak, and New Jersey Transit on the future reconstruction of Penn Station. These are all vast improvements from this body's vote to support a special permit 10 years ago when MSG made no such commitments. And still, we know today's vote is not the end of this story. If we vote to approve this special permit and text amendment, it will then go to the City Council, and if they vote to approve it, MSG will be required to return within just 6 months after to confirm that they are holding up their end of the bargain on public realm and loading improvements. And of course, when future plans for Penn Station are better known, specifically 30% of the design for the future Penn Station, MSG will come back again to ensure their continuing compatibility with those plans. For all of these reasons, I am enormously proud of the work that we've done throughout the process, including the substantial strengthening of the special permit findings that MSG has to meet. And I will be voting yes on these items, Madam Secretary. So count me as a yes. Thank you.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
I concur with the remarks of the chair. I vote yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
I vote aye in the hope that this time all of the involved and interested parties will be able to come together and present a unified vision for both Madison Square Garden and those people who consider Madison Square Garden a matter of great civic pride, as well as those who consider Penn Station I guess this is a vote for hope, and I vote aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Well, I'll just say for all the reasons that the chair outlined and Commissioner Benjamin outlined, I too vote aye.
Commissioner Crowell.
I too vote aye, for the same reasons, articulated by the chair and Commissioner Benjamin.
Commissioner Duick.
I'd like to associate myself with the comments of the chair and commend the department on the excellent work done on this application, and I vote yes.
Commissioner Gold.
This application has come a long way in the last few months, and I too would like to echo the comments of the chair and Commissioner Benjamin, and I vote aye.
Commissioner Kermani.
I vote yes, and also strongly align myself with the comments of the chair and Commissioner Benjamin for hope, and also really, really want to commend the department on the work. It's been an incredible amount of work. Thank you.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes, I would like to commend the department on the work that they have done. My vote is no.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
I too would like to vote yes, and I will also like to concur with the statements raised by Commissioner Benjamin and the chair. Thank you.
Favorable reports have been adopted as modified on calendar numbers 5 and 6. Borough of Queens, calendar number 7, 61st Avenue authorization, CD 11 N230079ZAQ, and the matter of an application for the grant of an authorization concerning 61st Avenue. For the adoption of calendar number 7, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 7 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 8 and 9, 94 Dalmere Road, CD2, calendar number 8 N230252ZAR, calendar number 9 N230253ZAR, and the matter of applications for the grant of authorizations concerning 94 Dalmere Road. For the adoption of calendar numbers 8 and 9, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar numbers 8 and 9 have been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 10, 17, 19, and 23 Altman Avenue, CD2 N230317ZCR, and the matter of an application for the grant of certification concerning 17, 19, and 23 Altman Avenue. For the adoption of calendar number 10, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick. Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar number 10 has been adopted. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 11 and 12, CD3, calendar number 11 N230334 RCR 20 Seidman Avenue, calendar number 12 N230203 RCR 507 Richard Avenue, and the matter of applications for the grant of certifications concerning 20 Seidman Avenue, 507 Richard Avenue. For the adoption of calendar numbers 11 and 12, Chair Garodnick.
Aye.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Crowell.
Yes.
Commissioner Duick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Commissioner Kermani.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramprashad.
Yes.
Calendar numbers 11 and 12 have been adopted. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 9.
Great. Thank you very much. We ask those who are testifying to limit their remarks to 3 minutes. And let me ask you, Madam Secretary, to call the first item for us today.
Borough Brooklyn, calendar number 13, 532 Fulton, DOHMH office space, CD2 N240001 PXK. In the matter, public hearing in the matter of an application for a notice of intent to acquire office space concerning 532 Fulton, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene office space.
Great. We have a number of people here signed up to testify on behalf of this applicant for 3 minutes. We've got Ksenia Inayatov, David Okulitz, Alex Brazakowski, Lydia Ledniak, Roman Swierczewski, and Charles Gross. You all challenged me on my pronunciation with this applicant team, but we are glad you are here. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, City Planning Commission. Apologies, I look like I'm crooked, but I'll make it fast. I'm David Okulitz. I'm the Executive Director of Facilities Planning and Space Management for the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Today, we're going to present the proposed relocation of our early intervention office space program from 16, from our current location to 32 Fulton Street in Brooklyn. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the program. The early intervention program provides services to children ages birth to 3 years with developmental delays and disabilities. The borough office houses 60 staff and serves more than 10,000 children each year. The borough office processes referrals, reviews all eligibility evaluations, and meets on-site and virtually with families of eligible children to develop and monitor service plans. Next slide, please. This is with regards to the current location, our current office space, which is 16 Court Street. The current office space and the need to relocate. The space is laid out poorly for operational needs. Staff are divided across 2 non-contiguous floors, the 2nd floor and the 6th floor within the building, and it makes supervision and staff coordination difficult, requiring duplicative waiting rooms and reception areas. Meetings are held in very small rooms that only accommodate 2 to 3 people. They sit very closely, and during COVID and was very much problematic. Lack of family rooms, meeting rooms for families. They have to sometimes reschedule because of the lack of rooms, because of the number of clients they see. And the space historically has consistent problems with circulation, extreme variances in hot and cold, being an older office space that hasn't seen renovation in quite some time. Next slide, please. These are some photos of the current office space at 16 Court, which we're looking to relocate. Again, we've tried to do our best over the years, but it's very dated, very inefficient, older type office space with small rooms, small individual offices, not operationally very difficult to work. Next slide, please. And here are the 2 floor plans of the current, our current location. Again, 2 floors, 2nd and 6th. And you can see with the different colors programmatically, it's very difficult to work between the 2 floors over all these years. Next slide, please. And now this is the new proposed location, 532 Fulton Street.
Time.
Wow.
Your time's up, but I'm going to pose a question to you. Tell us a little bit about your new location. The
new location is going to be located in a newly constructed building extremely close to mass transportation of all different types. It is on one entire floor, the 5th floor. So programmatically, the opportunity for the entire program to function and serve the client to its best needs will be served phenomenally, because it is all on one floor with one main reception waiting area for clients, multiple interview rooms and meeting rooms for families, and then an entire area where the entire staff work staff sits separate from those. So there's no intermixing of clients and staff walking through different areas that exist now. Operationally, it's really well laid out. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to start with Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. Sir, do you have a data on where your clientele is coming from across the city? Do they come from Brooklyn? Do they come from Manhattan? Do they come from a combination of the boroughs? Do you have an idea of where your clientele originates?
I believe I can answer that. I believe the program, we have hopefully they made it, the Assistant Commissioner of the program itself. I'm not sure if they're in the queue with us
Yes.
I'm asking a question. Yeah, I'm asking a question because I'd like to know how your relocation will impact their travel.
So we have our Assistant Commissioner of the program itself who can answer your questions.
Hi, good morning. So to answer your question, all of the clientele, we're required by law to have sites in every borough. So this relocation will have a minimal impact on the travel needs of clientele, as well as our providers commuting to the office. That is one of the parameters by which we selected the site.
So presumably your clientele is coming from Brooklyn?
All over Brooklyn, yes. And that is why the central location and the access to multiple train stations and travel options is so important.
So your current location is at the Court Street stop, right on the 2 or 3, as I...
The 2, 3, 4, 5.
2, 3, 4, 5, right.
And the A and the C are just 2 blocks away.
Okay.
And this is just down the street.
Just down the street. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Commissioner Benjamin.
One quick question. Are your employees working a hybrid work schedule at all?
No, our employees are not working a hybrid work schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there any additional space that you know of at 532 Fulton, to the extent that the Department of Health or other city agencies needed to locate in there, either on a temporary or permanent basis? I'm asking you to serve as the real estate broker here. I'm just curious.
So I see that DCAS is on the call, so I think that's for DCAS Real Estate Services to respond.
My understanding is that there are no other floors available at this time, or certainly no other floors of this size available at this time.
Okay, thank you. And this is I'm sorry if you said this, this is a 20-year proposed lease?
21.
21 years?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Let me see if there are any members of the public wishing to testify here. I see none. So with that, we will close the hearing on calendar number 13. I thank you all very much for your time and attention with us today, and thank you for all of your good work. So we'll move on to the next item on today's agenda, Madam Secretary.
Borough Brooklyn, calendar number 14, 280 Bergen Street, parking special permit, CD2, C230162ZSK. Public hearing in the matter of an application for a special permit concerning 280 Bergen Street, parking special permit.
Great, thank you. For 3 minutes, I think we still have our last applicant on. Okay, good. For 3 minutes, we have Dan Eggers of Greenberg-Traurig on Zoom. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Chair Garodnick, Commissioners. Dan Eggers, Land Use Attorney at Greenberg-Traurig. Good to be with you again, representing the applicant. This is an application by an affiliate of the Ulano Corporation for a special permit pursuant to Section 74533 of the zoning resolution to waive the residential parking requirements of ZR 2523 in proposed mixed-use developments on a portion of the block bounded by Nevin Street, 3rd Avenue, Bergen Street, and Wyckoff Street in Borum Hill. As the commission knows, this special permit application is being made at the request of the council member and the community board as a follow-up action to the rezoning that was approved last year. And given that the commission is familiar with the project, I will try to save some of your time here and be happy to take any questions now.
We're going to call this the fastest hearing in the history of the City Planning Commission. Thank you, Mr. Eggers, for your time. There are no questions and no members of the public wishing to testify. So thank you very much. We will close the hearing and move on to the next item. Thank you.
Thank you.
For Brooklyn, calendar number 15, 2761 Plum, 2nd Street rezoning. CD 15, C200101, ZMK, public hearing in the matter of an application for a zoning map amendment concerning 2761 Plum, 2nd Street rezoning.
Thank you. For 3 minutes, we have Richard Lobel. Mr. Lobel, welcome.
Mr. Grodnick, thank you. Commissioners, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC for the 2761 Plum 2nd Street rezoning. Next slide, please. This is a very straightforward rezoning application. The project description, which is on the next page, includes the applicant, Zalib LLC, which proposes a zoning map amendment from a C3 zoning district to an R32 C23 zoning district. This would facilitate the as-of-right operation of an existing long-standing use group 6 restaurant and eating and drinking establishment at the site. We do not intend to pursue new development as part of this. Instead, the applicant is seeking to avoid approaching BSA every 5 years for an extension of a special permit. The special permit allows for the operation of an eating and drinking establishment within a C3 district, and the applicant since 1987 has appeared before BSA 5 times. So by converting the existing district from a C3 to an R32 C23, the applicant will allow, this would allow the applicant to proceed as of right at the site. The community board recently voted in favor by a vote of 33-1, and we attended the Brooklyn Borough President's hearing last night. Next slide. This shows the zoning districts around the site. As you can see, there is an abundance of residential districts, particularly with commercial overlays. This is demonstrated by the next 2 slides. So the next slide is the tax map showing the boundaries of the rezoning area, which is inclusive of the commercial development at the site, as well as the associated parking area. The next slide shows the southern portion of the rezoning, and then the area map appears below that. The area map on the next slide demonstrates well why, regardless of our desire to avoid going to BSA every 5 years, as a land use matter and as a land use rationale, this application meets requirements. There are commercial overlays, as you can see, to the southwest of the property, as well as to the west of the property. There are R32 and R5 districts, as well as R6 districts within 200 to 400 feet of the property. So it's really an appropriate rezoning. The commercial use here is appropriate at the site, is permitted. Again, the eating and drinking establishment permitted by special permit, and we're seeking to avoid constantly reapproaching BSA. The next slide contains a copy of the zoning change map, which includes converting the existing C3 to an R32 C23 district. We note that the underlying residential permission and allowances pursuant to the C3 are identical to those in the R32. So essentially, this is not concerning redevelopment. This is really concerning just an appropriate commercial district for the site. The next slides that follow, and you can page through those quickly, includes photographs of the site. And with that, the applicant is happy to answer questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. LaBelle. Perfect. Just tell us what's in there now. I think I know you have a Cold Stone Creamery, a TGIF, and formerly, I believe, a Jordan's Seafood. Is that right?
Correct. Formerly Jordan's, and my understanding is that there will be a similar seafood retail store occupying that space. The applicant has, I think, secured that at the site. So what you see is what you get.
Okay. And you said the first special permit sought from BSA was 1987?
Correct. So the property received a variance from BSA in 1980 to allow the maintenance of an existing or enlargement of an existing commercial enterprise, that being the retail and wholesale operations of the fish market. In 1987, the space was converted to a restaurant, eating and drinking establishment pursuant to that special permit issued in 87, and that has been renewed 5 times since that time. Or roughly 5 times. It's been renewed, it's been granted and then renewed 4 times.
Great. Mr. LaBelle, thank you very much. We appreciate it. There are no questions other than those, and no members of the public on this one, so we'll let you off easy today.
Right.
This hearing is now closed. We'll move on to the next item.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar numbers 16 and 17, 244 East 106th Street, Share NYC. CD 11, calendar number 16, C230285 PQM, calendar number 17, C230286 PPM. Public hearing. In the matter of applications for a disposition of city-owned property and an acquisition concerning 244 East 106th Street, Share NYC.
Great, thank you. We have an applicant team here, which includes James Shikov, Chris Cirillo, Derek Gaskell, Marcia Bernard, and Felipe Cortez. Welcome to all of you on Zoom. Whenever you are ready, you have 10 minutes.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is James Shikov, and I'm a planner with the Manhattan Planning Team at HPD. Presenting with me today is Chris Cirillo, Executive Director of Ascendant Neighborhood Development, and we are joined by our colleagues and partners of the project who will introduce themselves during Q&A. As part of the ULURP process, we're excited to be here presenting the Share NYC project to the City Planning Commission. The project is a result of a request for expressions of interest by HPD in 2018 to explore how shared housing can work across a variety of building types in New York City. Next slide, please. So the ULURP application was certified on March 27th of this year. HPD is the applicant, and the development team working with us on this project is comprised of Ascendant Neighborhood Development and the Ali Forney Center. Share NYC will be a new construction 10-story building containing approximately 32 rooming units and 1 building manager's unit. The proposed project will be developed under HPD's Supportive Housing Loan Program, or SHLP, and the units will be affordable to households or individuals earning incomes up to 60% of AMI. The proposed development will be located at 244 East 106th Street on Block 1655, part of Lot 29, which is currently privately owned and is vacant. To facilitate the project, HPD proposes the following land use actions: the acquisition and disposition of the development site. The proposed land use actions are needed to facilitate the development. The development site is a formerly city-owned property that was conveyed to Ascendant in the mid-1990s to rehabilitate the existing building on the western portion of Lot 29. Since the former approvals were only for a rehab project and the development site remained vacant, new approvals are required to still facilitate the proposed project, which is new construction. Next slide, please. So here's a quick overhead view for more context of the location. The project will be on East 106th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenues, adjacent to an existing building managed by Ascendant on the western part of the lot. And now I'll hand it over to Chris Cirillo, who will give us an overview of the project.
Great. Thank you, James. And thank you, commissioners, for allowing us to present on this project today. Can we have the next slide, please? So the proposed project before you today is a 10-story new construction building that is proposed for the vacant portion of Lot 29. The proposed building will contain 4 duplex shared housing units on floors 3 through 10 of the new building. Each of those duplex units will consist of 1 shared kitchen. There will be 4 rooming units per floor on each of the 2 floors of the duplexes for a total of 8 rooming units in each duplex. Each floor of the duplex units will have 2 ADA accessible bathrooms. And so that gets us to a grand total of 32 rooming units in the building, plus the 1 building manager's unit, which will be located on the 2nd floor.
This will be 100% supportive housing. The residents of the building will be referred through New York City's Human Resources Administration. The building will be financed utilizing funding from HPD's Supportive Housing Loan Program, in addition to 9% low-income housing tax credits. So there'll be a cap on incomes at 60% of area median income. Next slide, please. For this project, Ascendant is partnered with the Ali Forney Center, which is the city's and actually the country's largest nonprofit provider of affordable housing for LGBTQ youth. Ali Forney will have staff on site 24/7 to provide services to residents of the building. The support space and service provision space will be on the second floor of the building. And in addition, there will be laundry facilities in each shared duplex unit for residents. On the ground floor, we have space set aside for multi-purpose gathering space, which is shown in the rendering on the top of the screen. There'll be work and study space for residents in each of the duplex units, and there will be an accessible landscape rear yard also available, which will be accessed off of the multi-purpose gathering space. And just to note, in the bottom right of your screen is sort of a section view of one of the duplex units showing on the right, a double height living space. Behind the living space is the shared kitchen. And on the left are two of the rooming units, just to give you some context for how the duplexes are laid out. Next slide, please. So the building is located in a flood zone on 106th Street in East Harlem. And so we have designed it to the latest resiliency standards, including fully waterproof cellar. Building mechanical spaces are located either on the ground floor or on the roof to ensure that the building operations would not be impacted in the case of a future flooding event. And on the screen is a view of the ground floor with the lobby, the multi-purpose space that I just referenced, and the rear yard. The building will have a green roof and will meet Enterprise Green Community standards. Next slide. And that's it. So thank you for allowing us to present on this project. We're very excited to be moving it forward and to have had the support of Community Board 11 and the Manhattan Borough President during our first steps through the ULURP process. And we're here and happy to answer any questions you have about the project.
Great. Let me start with just the basic one. It sounds like it has had a little bit of a complicated history here in that this is acquisition of a previously owned lot by the city, and it will be dispositioned to this developer. Can you just say a little bit more about the events that lead us up to today?
I'm happy to answer that, sure. So the site, this lot 29, was previously disposed by HPD to Ascendant in the mid-1990s. At the time, we were selected by the city to rehabilitate 3 vacant city-owned buildings. And those buildings, along with the vacant lot adjacent to one of those buildings, which is the site that we're discussing today, were conveyed to Ascendant for that rehabilitation project. So the occupied building next door, just to the west of the development site at 242 East 106th Street, a building down the block at 332 East 106th Street, and a building around the corner at 2051 2nd Avenue, were conveyed by HPD through an accelerated UDAP process. And so at the time, there were no plans for new construction on the vacant lot. It was simply conveyed to Ascendant as accessory to the rehab cluster. At the time in the mid-1990s, HPD didn't have a multifamily new construction program for small infill sites. And so I guess it was felt that the best disposition strategy for this site at the time was to sell it along with the adjacent building, which was being rehabbed. And so our organization has owned it for the last 25 plus years, close to 30 years now. As we were looking at it as a potential for redevelopment, the site was upzoned as part of the East Harlem rezoning a few years ago. it looked like there was development potential for the site. It is small. And so that was what led us to look at a potential supportive housing project for the site. And ultimately what led us to the proposal that's before you today. Because the site was disposed under an accelerated UDAP, it was not contemplated to be developed as a new construction 10-story building. And so HPD has to reacquire the site from Ascendant and then redispose of it to us to facilitate this project with the disposition approvals in place that contemplate the proposed project.
Okay, so in short, if disposed through accelerated UDAP, you cannot do new construction without a reacquisition and then redisposition? I can see that Commissioner Benjamin knows the answer to my question, but I'm going to give you the first chance, and then she can jump in too. Go ahead.
Sure. The accelerated UDAP allows HPD to dispose of property for either rehab projects or 1 to 4 family new construction. That would not allow the project as proposed. So that's what is necessitating going back and doing the acquisition and disposition, which will happen once we're through this process and ready to actually close on the project. It happens essentially on paper at the closing. When we're ready to close with HPD on the financing for the project, HPD will momentarily reacquire the property and then dispose it right back to us for the project with the new approvals in place.
Okay, got it. Great, thank you.
And Chair Garodnik, is this just basically to get the new approvals to allow for a new construction project and change it from the previous rehab approvals? So that's why we need the new approvals for it.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you, Chair. Sir, you said earlier that the occupants would be referred by HRA. I believe that's what you said. I'm wondering, is there any preference, would there be any preference given to East Harlem Community Board 11 and occupancy needs that might emerge from those communities?
Good morning, Chair Knuckles. You are correct. The units will be filled out with HRA referrals. When filling units through that process, there is no community board preference. However, during the process of selecting potential tenants, potential candidates could add a bureau or community board preference there where they want to reside. So there's going to be a space or the opportunity for them to raise that they want to reside in this community, in this particular building. And as until now, the city has been accepting that as a request, as a specific preference, and we try our best to, facilitate that allocation. So we expect to follow the same process.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Commissioner Marin.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Chris, my question is directed at you. I'd like a little bit further clarification. You're saying that there are 4 individuals per floor, but the units are duplexed. So in each unit, I'm assuming there's going to be 8 youth. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So the building from floors 3 through 10 is divided up in a series of 4. The terminology gets a little confusing. 4 shared housing units. So each duplex is considered 1 shared housing unit. So there's a total of 4 shared housing units in the building. Each of those shared housing units, which is a duplex, has 8 rooming units in it, and an individual resident will live in each one of those 8 rooming units. It's essentially bedrooms. So each individual resident will have a lease for their individual rooming unit and access to the shared common spaces within that duplex unit that they occupy with the other 7 residents of that shared unit. So they'll have access to the living room space, the shared kitchen, the bathrooms, laundry facilities, work and study spaces, And there, within each duplex unit, there's a connecting stair that connects from the lower level to the upper level, and the building is served by an elevator so that all of the floors are accessible.
Chris, just one more time. So it's a shared housing unit,
Yes.
right? I'm just trying to learn the terminology since, I'm sorry, shared housing, go ahead.
No, a shared housing unit, and each shared housing unit contains 8 rooming units.
8 rooming units, okay. No, the reason why I'm asking is because we have had a presentation about this type of housing a couple of years ago, and it's interesting to see that it's now being applied, and in this concept of shared for youth, LGBT youth. And since this is a model that I'm sure will be replicated, I just want to make sure I get the terms right for future. So thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gold.
Thanks, Chris. Just a point or two of clarification. One is, you just discussed a little bit, I guess Ascendant owns the site, and is Ascendant the developer, and then Ali Forney winds up running it, or how does the relationship work?
Sure. So Ascendant is the current owner of the site from the prior disposition of the adjacent building plus the vacant lot. We are co-developers. Our agreement with Ali Forney is that we are co-developers of the project. Ascendant is taking the lead. As an affordable housing provider, we're taking the lead on that, but they are a co-developer of the project. And then they will also be the service provider. And that includes being on site with staffing 24/7, with funding through supportive housing loan program, and for the support services that will serve the residents of the building.
Got it. So is it Ascendant who's actually running it, or is it Ali Forney, and Ali Forney is paying rent to Ascendant? Like, how does that relationship work?
Sure. Ali Forney will be running the building once it's developed and occupied. So they will take the lead in managing the building and providing the services, working with HRA to select the residents of the building. So they will be in charge of day-to-day operations. And at that point, once the building is built and occupied, Ascendant's role will just be as co-owner of the property.
Got it. So effectively, they'd run it, and I guess as co-owner, Ascendant would collect some form of rent, presumably. Did we lose you?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm sorry. They aren't paying us rent because they're a co-owner of the space. So they as a co-owner will be just using the space and managing the building. So there's no rent payment from them because they're not a tenant, they're a co-owner.
Got it. And then just for a second, I guess this site was selected in 2019 for the SHARE program, if I remember correctly. Just talk a little bit about the process from there to here of just, figuring out what, presumably in that time it was finding a partner and also figuring out the structure and how many people one could house here?
So we had actually started looking at this site and having conversations with the Ali Forney Center prior to the SHARE NYC RFEI that came out in 2018. And at the time, we were looking at it as a more traditional HPD supportive housing loan program project, which would have consisted of essentially individual studio apartments for residents of the building. Because it's a small site and a small footprint, we would have gotten fewer studio apartments in the building and been able to house fewer people, because each of those studio apartments would have had to have its own kitchenette and its own separate bathroom. And then because of the shape and size of the building, we would have had a lot of essentially wasted space for sort of a overly large corridor in the middle of the site, with the apartments at the north and south ends where we can have our windows. And so when SHARE NYC, the RFEI came out, we looked at that and worked with the Ali Forney Center and our architects and came up with, looked at a number of different ways to reconfigure the building as shared housing, and settled on the concept that we have before you today. And it really makes so much more sense. We capture so much more of the space. We have much better amenities, and we think a much more home-like environment, which was really important to us and to Ali Forney to serve this population of young people, many of whom are identify as LGBTQ plus, and have experienced homelessness and housing instability. So, that was really sort of the process. And then we submitted. We were one of 3 teams that were selected by HPD in response to that RFEI in 2019. That designation happened late in 2019. Obviously, things slowed down because of the pandemic. So it has taken a little while to get to this point where we're finally in ULURP. But we've used that time to do outreach in the community. We've met with multiple committees of Community Board 11, not just the Land Use, Landmarks, and Planning Committee, but Human Services, Youth and Education, and Economic Development and Culture. And we've had really strong support from the Community Board and from Deputy Speaker Ayala throughout this process. So we're just really excited to finally be at this point and moving the project forward.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Super helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Benjamin.
I have two different questions. The first one is, I'm assuming that this is not considered, I don't know anything about rooming units per se. I assume this is not considered a multiple dwelling, but rather not-for-profit with housing accommodations?
Yes.
Excuse me?
Yes, it is a nonprofit with sleeping accommodations.
Okay. And how does that differ from a multiple dwelling for the residents? Do they have the same tenant protections that they would be afforded if they were in a multiple dwelling?
Yes, they'll all have leases similar to the leases that they would have if it was considered a multiple dwelling. It's really more of sort of a zoning technicality of being considered a community facility as opposed to residential multifamily dwelling. But the way residents are treated, their rights as residents of the building are consistent with the way they would be if it was just considered a regular multiple dwelling.
And
the same.
Just to jump in here from HPD, also the project will be bounded by HPD's supportive housing loan program, and through that there'll be a regulatory agreement, and tenants have their the income limits up to 60% of AMI, as well as subsequent rent increases will be governed by rent stabilized rent increases by the rent guidelines.
But if there was, let's say, a non-payment, they would be entitled to the same legal protections as someone who is a resident of a multiple dwelling?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to know because I'm not familiar with the rooming units. It's a new, you're the first one I've seen, so I thought I'd use your expertise. And the second one is, since this is, and Ali Forney is particularly looking at the youth population for LGBTQ, youth age. And so is it contemplated that sometime in the future they will still be there and this will be a facility for older LGBT people? Or is it contemplated that they would be moving at some stage and more youth would be able to avail themselves of this opportunity?
Yeah, so very good question. And it's one that has come up, pretty much since we started presenting the project and that we've talked through as a team and with HPD. So it is permanent supportive housing under HPD's supportive housing loan program. So while at initial move-in, the residents need to meet the requirements of being within the ages of 16 to 24, they will have leases. It's permanent housing. They can stay beyond the age of 24 if they choose to do so. Our expectation is that at some point they will probably want to move on to other types of housing situations. The building is specifically designed and the services that are going to be provided are specifically targeted to a youth population. but no one will be, evicted or compelled to move out because they age out of the initial age requirements. Ali Forney currently provides a range of housing services from, transitional housing and is becoming more involved in providing permanent supportive housing. And this is one of the projects in their pipeline to sort of provide a spectrum of housing services to young people. So from getting them stabilized, getting them into transitional housing, and then when this project comes online, having the opportunity to move into a more permanent but still service-enriched environment. And our belief is that eventually residents will decide they want to move out and move into their own apartments or into other situations as their lives change, as they get older. And certainly as an affordable housing provider in the neighborhood, Ascendant, will work with Ali Forney and the residents and our own portfolio in the neighborhood to facilitate anybody who's ready to move out into a more independent living situation in the future. We still have a number of years before we get there.
Thank you very much for that answer. And last question, can the residents invite a friend or a partner to live there with them?
I know we have, I believe we have Marcia Bernard from Ali Forney on, and maybe if she is available, can speak to how Ali Forney currently operates and what the rules are that govern the housing that they currently operate. Oh, there's Marcia.
Hi folks, Marcia, she, her pronouns. So at the current sites right now, the clients cannot have someone move in or stay over because most of our clients, they have so much trauma that's happening in their past. So to have someone come over, we just don't allow that. And most of our sites are confidential sites, so that the clients are not even allowed to tell other folks where they're staying. If they do have to meet with someone, they could meet them around the corner or in the park or something, but they can't have folks on site with them.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you very much. I see no members of the public wishing to testify on this item, calendars 16 and 17 at 244 East 106th Street. So we will close the hearing on this and move on to the next. Madam Secretary.
Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 18 and 19, 4218 31st Avenue rezoning. CD1, calendar number 18, C230012 ZMQ. Calendar number 19, N230013 ZRQ. Public hearing in the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 4218 31st Avenue rezoning.
Thank you. First up, I see Elise Follidaire.
Chair, I'm recused on this matter.
Commissioner Rampersad is recused on this. Thank you, Commissioner. Elise Follidaire to kick us off for 4218 31st Avenue.
Okay,
and
thank you, sir.
on Zoom and whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, I am ready. Thank you. Elise Follidaire from Eric Palatnik PC. Next slide, please. We are seeking a contextual rezoning for a portion of 31st Avenue and 42nd and Newtown Road for a zoning map amendment from R5 C12 to an R6A C13, an amendment to remove the C12 district for the mid-block properties, and an amend Appendix F to map an inclusionary housing area with options 1 or 2. Next slide, please. The proposed development covers the existing Coca La Rev site and adjacent lots on the block front at 31st Avenue between 42nd and 43rd Streets. The surrounding area is predominantly residential with a mix of 5 to 6-story apartment buildings and 2 to 3-story houses with mixed uses along the wider east-west avenues. The site is close to Broadway and Steinway and well served by public transit. Next slide, please. The proposed action would facilitate a total of 38,189 square feet, 3.53 FAR, consisting of 30,189 square feet of residential floor area with 35 dwelling units and 8,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space. Approximately 9 of the 35 dwelling units would be affordable. There'd be 12 parking spaces and 25 bicycle spaces. Next slide, please. The community board and borough president voted in favor. Please see a breakdown of apartments presented to the community board. 38% of the building was sized for families. In response to the commission's question, we did hear from CB1 a preference for more 2 to 3 bedroom apartments, and we are open to considering more larger units. However, it is our understanding that market demand in Astoria is much higher for studios and 1 bedroom apartments. Next slide, please. Given the owner's local experience running a health club, the proposed ground floor use here will be a boutique fitness and wellness studio. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The proposed actions would facilitate a small increase in residential density and would reconfigure the location of commercial uses on a wide street and 3-way intersection located near 2 commercial corridors. The addition of new residents, commercial spaces facing 31st Street and built form of the proposed development would help shape and activate the irregularly configured intersection. Retail would be focused on 31st Street and removed from the mid blocks to concentrate commercial activity along an existing commercial street. The site's location at a nexus of 3 streets creates a unique opportunity to bolster a large intersection with an improved pedestrian landscape by creating a strong street wall and providing commercial space on the ground floor. It will help lengthen the robust retail environment that already exists along 31st Avenue near its intersection with Steinway Street, which is just 3 blocks away. Next slide, please. Here are land uses and showing the appropriate size and scale of the proposed building in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. That's an appendix that includes photographs and the plans for your reference if you have any questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, thank you. Just go back to the site of the slide with the context just for a second because we did that quick. Okay,
sorry.
Good. That's okay. No, it's not your fault. You had limited time here. Okay, so put this in context for us. Under the R6A, you have a maximum height of 85 feet. Is that correct? With a base height of 40 to 65?
Yeah, and you can see here similar base heights and similar sized buildings to the building we're proposing, and similar kinds of uses. You can see that there's a mix. There's some residential here, community facility, and that they are all not on where 6 different streets meet, but we are.
Okay, got it. All right, and the ground floor plan for you is 8,000 square feet of commercial, is that right?
Yeah, with a potential yoga studio gym, because our owner has a lot of experience in the neighborhood opening. He has the Rock and Health Fitness Center.
Okay, and there's an existing curb cut on 43rd, is that right? Do I have this right, on 43rd Street?
I believe so. We can go to the plans, which should have the confirmation, but yes.
Yes on that?
Keep going. Keep going. 43rd. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, 43rd. You can see it.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to call next. So thank you, Ms. Fullader. We're going to move on to Nellie Hennessy.
Nellie's part of our team. I just had her in case.
Aha. I had a suspicion, but I didn't want to assume here because
she's the architect.
Okay. All right. Well, so it sounds like Ms. Hennessy was available just for questions, so I do not see anybody else available or interested in testifying on this item. 4218 31st Avenue. We will close the hearing on calendars 18 and 19 and move on to the next, Madam Secretary.
Thank you so much.
Borough Staten Island, calendar number 20, 125 Greaves Lane, CD3 C220456ZMR. Public hearing in the matter of an application for a zoning map amendment concerning 125 Greaves Lane.
Great. For this item, we have an applicant team for 10 minutes, consisting of Justin Jarbo, Adam Rothkrug, and Gaetano Donna Antonio. Forgive me if I have done damage to your name.
No problem. Thank you. This is Adam Rothkrug. Can you hear me?
You know, we can barely hear you, so.
Let me me see if I can. I'll try to speak louder. Is that any better?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, apologies. Chair Garodnick, members of the commission, Adam Rothkrug of Rothkrug Inspector on behalf of 125 Greaves Lane LLC. Slide 2. This is in connection with an application to add a C21 commercial overlay to an existing R32 district. The approval will allow the expansion of permitted uses within an existing building from community facility uses to both community facility and commercial uses. No new construction is proposed or will foreseeably be permitted by the proposed rezoning. Next slide. The existing zoning lot is over 1 million square feet in area, consisting of several tax lots and developed with a variety of uses that include the existing Evergreen Shopping Center, approximately 336,000 square feet in area, along with residential development of 386,000 square feet. You can see the site is the single building on a single tax lot located on the westerly part of the site. Slide 5. The rezoning will only affect tax lot 425, which is a trapezoidal shaped parcel with approximately 42,500 square feet of lot area, improved with a existing one-story community facility building built in 2014, approximately 11,000 square feet in size. Slide 6. The proposed rezoning will allow the owner to lease space to a wider variety of uses, including retail uses consistent with the rest of the shopping center, which is located within the adjacent commercial overlay, and as noted, will not allow any new construction. Slides 8 and 9. There is residential development to the west of the existing building, but it is well screened with a dense thicket of evergreen trees on both sides of the properties. I think if you go to the next slide, you'll see the screening. Approximately 20 feet in high. There was no record of any issues with the adjacent residential neighborhood, and the community board, I believe, reached out to them prior to their unanimous approval of the change. The proposed change to commercial uses will generate a small amount of additional required parking, as one of the community facility uses is currently a school, which does not require any parking. And this parking will be met on the existing zoning lot, which provides parking for 735 cars, which now exceeds the required amount, 659 required now, increasing potentially to 723 cars. At the time the zoning resolution was adopted in 1961, the area to the north and east of the development site was mapped with a small grid of paper streets. This was all in an M11 district. This was all rezoned. Not sure why this small trapezoid was kept out from the commercial overlay, but the community has had no issues with the operation of the building and doesn't foresee any potential issues in the event commercial uses were introduced into this building. The rest of the team is available to answer any questions the commission has.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me see if there are questions for you on this. Okay, thank you very much. We don't have questions for you, so we're going to make your day a little easier. And there are no members of the public wishing to testify on this item, so we'll close the hearing on 125 Greaves Lane, calendar 20, and move on to the next, Madam Secretary.
Thank you very much.
Borough of the Bronx, calendar numbers 21 and 22. 1460, 1480 Sheridan Boulevard, CD9, calendar number 21, C230291ZMX, calendar number 22, N230292ZRX. Public hearing in the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning 1416, 1480 Sheridan Boulevard. Notice. A public hearing is being held by the City Planning Commission in conjunction with the above ULURP actions to receive comments related to a draft environmental impact statement. This hearing is being held pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act and the City Environmental Quality Review.
Great, thank you. For this item, we have an applicant team for 10 minutes, which includes a number of people, and I'm going to name you all. Ashley Dukas, Brian Newman, Britt Zuckerman, Rachel Belsky, Brian Reardon, Patricia Simone, Max Stember-Young, Ross Moskowitz, Aileen Gribben, and Joe Simone. And if I missed anybody, you'll let me know. Okay, there it is. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Ashley Dukas from Strzok. We represent the applicant. I'm here with my colleague, Ross Moskowitz. The applicants are both affiliates of Simone Development Companies. Simone is a Bronx headquartered family-run development company. They have owned the 2 development sites since approximately 1978 and are thrilled to bring this 100% affordable housing proposal before you today. The project received a positive recommendation from Community Board 9 and a positive recommendation from Borough President Gibson with conditions. We've also met with Community Boards 2 and 3, the Youth Ministries for Peace and Justice, and numerous times met with the Bronx River Alliance. Next slide, please. The rezoning area is outlined in red. Proposed development site 1 is to the north, adjacent to Starlight Park. That's 1460 Sheridan Boulevard. Proposed development 2 is the larger site to the south, 1480 Sheridan Boulevard. Those are the 2 Simone-controlled sites. The 3 lots in between are not controlled by Simone, but part of the rezoning area. You see the residential uses in the surrounding area, the Compass residence across the street approved in 2011, all the ongoing improvements and extensions of Starlight Park, and the conversion of Sheridan Expressway to the boulevard. So we believe this is the last piece of the puzzle for this community. Next slide, please. The proposed actions are a zoning map amendment from an M11 to an R73 and a C24 overlay, and a text amendment to map it MIH. The related actions are a waterfront application for certifications for both development sites and a visual corridor authorization for 1480 Sheridan Boulevard. Next slide, please. A DEIS was prepared for the project and was issued on April 7th. The DEIS identified impacts with respect to transportation traffic, transportation pedestrians, and construction traffic. No other impacts were identified. Next slide, please. Here's the zoning change map from the M11 to an R73. R73s are specific waterfront zoning or special district, and you can see the surrounding R7 and the R8X where the Compass buildings were rezoned. Next slide, please. The proposed development summary, so for 1460 Sheridan Boulevard, that'll be 1 building comprised of approximately 248,000 zoning square feet and 304 dwelling units. 1480 Sheridan Boulevard, the largest site, will be 2 buildings, approximately 543,000 zoning square feet and 666 dwelling units, all proposed for 100% affordable housing through HPD's programs. Next slide, please. The applicant has been working with and will submit an application for the Mix and Match program. The breakdown is on the screen and has been presented to you and other members of the community. In summary, 40% of the total 970 dwelling units will be at 50% or below.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Newman. Next slide, please. What you see here is the site plan of the northernmost site, which is known as 1460. Just to the top of the page or the north is Starlight Park. To orient yourself, Bronx River to the right, Sheridan Boulevard to the left side. As you can see here on this particular site, we pulled the building back 15 feet south from Starlight Park to open this up to allow the public to engage in access to the Shore Public Walkway. That's the serpentine graphic that you see that runs along the side of the building there, along the Bronx River. And then we have the upland connection at the southern portion. The massing itself of the building complies with R73, which is the tower on the base. Essentially, the base is 7 stories, and then we pulled the tower further south away from the park. It goes 10, 20, and ultimately 24 stories, and then again steps back down towards the river at approximately 6 stories towards the river. Closest point per waterfront access is 40 feet. That's the closest distance. Approximately 80 feet in the middle of the building there. Again, 15 feet away from the park, 35 feet to the south. Next slide, please. Here's a rendition. It's a work in progress, obviously, but the idea here is to show the architecture and the varying materials, massing. We're studying the differences in masonry, rain screen, window wall, punch windows, playing with massing, heights, to break up the overall massing of the building. It's important to note here the glazing on the ground floors for the commercial space, which is not only on Sheridan Boulevard, but on the north side, which is Starlight Park to the left. That's sort of the gateway, the entrance to Starlight Park, and wraps its way around into the waterfront access. Blazing, light, all open, helps with security and activation for the building. The vegetation on the roof is hinting at or noting green roof, as well as a photovoltaic study will be done. It'll be fully electrified, and of course, will be compliant with Enterprise Green Communities New York City overlay. Next slide, please. This is a view from the rear of the building. Starlight Park would be to the right. You see the shore waterfront access there and glazing, and again, stepping down towards the river. Next slide, please. 1480, this is the southernmost site, two parcels here, two buildings on this particular parcel. On the left-hand side, we have a 70-foot wide visual corridor. That's sort of the prolongation of Jennings Street, significantly wide there at 70 feet. It's like the size of almost a wide street in New York City. The center between the two goes from 60 feet all the way up to 95 feet. That's the second visual corridor. And the street frontage, or the opening on the southern portion there, is 140 feet. So much larger than a wide city street, almost two city streets wide. The idea is to really open this up and create a gateway and a path to really bring the public into this site down to the river. This particular site has a grade change of approximately 1 story. So as you'll see a little bit later on, we have an amphitheater and a grade change through this particular center area. Next slide, please. Again, same tower on a base. 7 stories up to the 20 stories stepping back. You could really see that gateway, as I was mentioning before. That's that visual corridor, and we indicate a mural there so you can actually announce this from a distance, and it'll really draw the public in. Next slide, please. View from the river. Looking back, you start to get a hint of that amphitheater in between the buildings. Again, very similar to the other buildings, highly programmed at the ground floor there, both on the street as well as the riverfront with the glazing and the walkway. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll transition over to our landscape architect.
Hi, my name's Britt. These are the existing conditions of the site, so you can understand how the waterfront has been broken off from the community through years of industry. Next slide. And one of the wonderful things about this site is we're trying to create a connected greenway along both sites and create a series of amenities for visitors to the park. So this would include looking at the history of how the site was used. We looked at historic photographs, as well as the ecology of the site. Historically, the site was used as a promenade, and also it was once plentifully used by the North American beaver. That influenced a lot of our geometry to have a serpentine oxbow-style pathway, which also helped us to accommodate a lot of the severe grade changes. In the lower site, we have almost a 14-foot grade change. So in order to make the site feel accessible and welcoming to all, we have a series of sloped walks, rampways, and stairs, as well as moments for pause, so that people at varying abilities can have moments for recreation, rest, and conversation. The centerpiece of the southern site is an amphitheater, which will allow for opportunities for groups to gather, buskers. There will also be a series of educational signage throughout to alert people to some of the wonderful features of this, including bioswales, native tree plantings, and permeable paving. Next slide. This gateway is how we're trying to activate the space and invite the public in. It's a large open space, as Brian had mentioned, and there's these series of walkways that will create different adventures and journeys for you to come down to the waterfront. And you'll have this glimpse of this waterfront, this peek and reveal moment to say, please come in, please enjoy this park. We'll have successional bloom of most of the plantings, so there'll be something interesting happening year round. Next slide. And you'll start to understand that there's varying materials, and these materials were selected to speak to the language of neighboring Starlight Park. So our park will have its own identity, but it will also speak to its neighboring park, so it feels like a continuous greenway. There's an overhang. The rendering shows it with a paver, but ours will actually be a permeable metal grating to allow light to get through and also help improve the ecology of the river. And all the plantings will be bioswales to capture stormwater runoff. Next slide, please. This slide will show the connection up towards Starlight Park, as well as the plentiful plantings, glazing of the building, so there's this indoor-outdoor experience, and we really feel that an activated space through safety will feel welcoming to all. Next slide. And critical to our project is this connection to Starlight Park. We've had numerous meetings with the Parks Department as well as Bronx River Alliance about ways to make this feel activated and a space for gathering. So that's part of this stepped seating area will feel as a great gathering space. We have grass pavers, so it's still functional for the boat launch and storage areas. Next slide, please. And this is part of our grander vision to have this connected greenway. You can see that our parks will connect to Starlight Park and neighboring Concrete Park, and hopefully bringing this green thread along the Bronx River of what it once was. Next slide. Last one. Great. You can see the greenway.
Okay, why don't you can finish up and tell us what's on this slide, please.
All right, thank you, appreciate it. This is a connected greenway that shows a much larger picture of the Bronx River, and you kind of can see that our puzzle piece is so critical to having this greenway connect through. It's the missing bit.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's start there for a second, because I just want to make sure I understand this as the missing piece or a final piece here. We have lot 74 and lot 29, which are the ones that are to be developed here at 1460 and 1480. There are 3 lots in between, though, that are staying put and are not owned by the applicant. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So in slide 8, you know what? I don't know what slide number it was. There was the context slide, which showed the 2 sites. Mm-hmm. And there was a very narrow dotted line which said continuous greenway in between them.
Oh, yes.
Can you just say a little bit about that? This is not it yet. Let's see if we can go back a couple more.
It's probably slide 3 or...
It's slide 14.
14. So the 3 center sites are part of the rezoning area, so they will get the R73 with the commercial overlay, and then with that, any development would trigger waterfront compliance. So you'd have to meet the waterfront zoning text, and they'd be required to extend the shore public walkway. Part of our requirements with our waterfront applications are to ensure a connection point at those, meeting those center property lines. So when center developer or developers do develop, it will meet our shore public walkway.
Right, so it's future development which triggers that requirement for a connection.
Correct.
Your proposed development would stop at the border, enable it,
yes,
and wait for the future, essentially.
Essentially.
Okay, and your waterfront actions, they're still pending.
Correct.
Before the department. So this can't be a final project until that is considered and approved, correct?
We cannot get DOB permits until we get the certifications.
Okay, so we'll be talking about this separately as part of a follow-up action here. Okay, slide 18, if you don't mind. Let's just talk about that connection to Starlight Park. So Starlight Park is on the northern end of this, right?
Correct.
Can you just walk me through this image here, just so I understand it? Are we looking south toward the end of lot 74 and
correct?
14?
You're looking south towards, that's the building wall of 1460 Sheridan Boulevard. Across the Sheridan Boulevard would be east 172nd Street. This is now part of New York City Parks jurisdiction, and there's a gate blocking off access to the area that you see on the image. So we've been working with Parks Department over the past year to open the gate up and push it back. You can see the gate line to the proposed boat launch. So we're moving the gate back to still preserve that area for emergency boat access. And the goal is to open this area up, provide a food grab-and-go area to have members visitors of the park to know that our park is open to the public, to activate that area, to make it safe, to have a visual connection and a physical connection between Starlight Park and our site.
It looks like some complicated grade changes here, if I'm perceiving this correctly.
Well, one of them could speak to the technical of it, but there is a grade change, and that's why we've worked with Parks Department on what those steps and seating would be like to allow for it to go down into the park.
Okay, all right. Well, I can see that. I can see it here. Okay, last question for me. The status with HPD. I understand this is mix and match program. What is the current dynamic? You're proposing that this is a 100% income restricted development. What's the status of your conversations with HPD?
Sure. We met with HPD over the
many years that we've been working with this agency, and we most recently met on June 26th with the planning staff of this proposal again, and Commissioner Carrion was present, and we, I don't want to speak for them, but it was a positive, exciting meeting, and once this is finalized, we will be submitting an application once the building programming is figured out.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Thank you very much. First, I just want to thank you for the clarification on the waterfront. What the concept of this reminds me of is sort of the cross-access that we have. It's a Staten Island thing, of course, but where the parking lots are created and parking where you have to build now, the point at which a lot that may be built next to you can connect to the lot, so you're not forcing cars in and out. So I sort of just appreciated the explanation of how you would set up the ends to prepare for the future and the connection. I think it's really smart and valuable to the community and to the future projects. I just want to sort of commend the presentation, but also the thoughtfulness and the attractiveness. Not the best word, but it's really a very attractive proposal. I want to focus for a moment on sort of the public realm and the outdoor elements. One thing I didn't see, and maybe it's just I missed it, but lighting. What is happening in sort of this area that's being created with respect to lighting? Be interesting to know that. I'll just throw a couple of things out. The other thing is on the materials and whatever activations may be occurring there in terms of engaging whether it's the community who lives in those buildings or surrounding community that would come to enjoy this beautiful new space. Who produces, manages, maintains all of this that's happening? Who would develop those plans, and who will manage all of this space?
Take the lighting first.
Okay, I'll do lighting first. So lighting, we will be 100% compliant with DCP regulations. So everything will have a minimum of a 2-foot candle lighting. Sorry, can you hear me better this way? I apologize. I'll start back. We will have a completely compliant lighting with DCP regulations, so we'll have a minimum of 2-foot candles throughout the site. We'll also strive to have lighting that's dark sky compliant, so we aren't offensive to our nocturnal species. We also want to make sure that we have safe spaces for nighttime use. So that has been raised in some of the community feedback, that the space has to be well lit for safety. Okay. And as well as the park will have rules and regulations for when it's open at certain hours. So all of that will be posted per DCP regulations. Materiality selection, I think you asked how we selected the materials?
No. I mean, there were some beautiful material options, and I just wondered, in the long term, in terms of maintaining the materials, who ultimately will there be a separate entity responsible for maintaining those spaces, or how will that work?
There's a two-part answer to this. So the first thing is the materials selected are very durable and they're standard use in public parks. So that helps, establish a certain threshold for making sure that they don't have high maintenance materials with heavy replacements. The second will be, Ashley wanted to answer about maintenance.
I'll just add to that, there will be, a restrictive declaration recorded against the properties tied with the waterfront certifications, and the plans are attached to that for everything with lighting and materials that are being proposed. And then you asked about maintenance of the, it will be
the operation of the space, in the sense of if there is activations or engagements that are occurring.
Right. Well, the schools are located across the street. We've committed to Community Board 9 to help activate like the amphitheater that Britt walked through in the Center Plaza area with the Bronx River Alliance. So we're hoping that with the surrounding community, with the schools being so close, that we will be able to activate it. Simone has run large campus developments before of different uses and has experience with that. So
I guess that's the point. So Simone would be doing this. It's not that there's the vision would be to create, and perhaps that is something down the line, but to create some entity
Right.
that would be doing those things. At this point, the expectation is that it would remain in the developer's
Correct, at this point,
hands
yes.
and part of their, okay, understood.
Sarah, can you go back one slide, please? The prior slide. Yes, sorry. Oh, the one before. Oh. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
done.
Yeah,
No,
anyway.
I thought there was some.
I was
reference
going to
the-
show the activation of, that's fine, you can leave it
You
there.
just wanted a prettier picture up there while we were talking.
Just for you, just for you.
Smart. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kamani?
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. Have a couple questions. One, how do you and the Parks Department currently use the lot that is being proposed to be modified?
It's currently gated off and the public cannot enter that area, and the Bronx River Alliance uses it for some storage space, and Parks Department accesses through the boat launch, but if necessary.
Okay, and will that, will that change, and how does that?
Well, we're not proposing to take ownership over any of the space or use any of the space for a private purpose of any nature, so the square footage will all remain the same. And in the rendering I just took off the screen, it does show the storage containers for Parks Department or Bronx River Alliance. So everything will be able to be used as it is today.
Okay. And then just on the relationship with the Bronx River Alliance, and I'm sure, as we all know, cleaning up the Bronx River and having it where I encourage people to go kayak along the Bronx River if they haven't done it. It's been, a 25-year journey to get the Bronx River where it is. Is there a conceived of or proposed kind of long-term relationship with the Bronx River Alliance to ensure that the Bronx River is not just maintained the way it is, but that there's an investment into its future uses? And
we've been meeting with the Bronx River Alliance, and just 2 weeks ago, a bunch of us were there. Patricia Simone is here today, and she committed to them and wants to be, the neighbors, to work together, to activate, to have that relationship. So yes, from Simone's point of view, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Marin on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to, if you could, please address some of the conditions in the Borough President's report. Specifically, I think there were concerns around height as well as including more than 3 and 4 bedrooms. Is there something you can provide on that?
Sure. Her report mentions concerns about height in the surrounding area. What slide is it? If you go to slide 23. The R73 is waterfront zoning, and waterfront zoning calls for specific widths of buildings, tower on a base. It allows for visual corridors. We work closely with City Planning's Urban Design and Bronx office for all the connection points, have really specific design intent and purposes. If you get to slide 23, we have a diagram of its comparison with the Compass buildings that Brian can speak to a little more. I think I believe her report also speaks to understanding that a reduction in the height of buildings would also, that last one prior, sorry, 22, would also, result in a reduction of square footage and affordable housing units. Brian, you want to speak to this slide?
Thank you, Ashley. Obviously, there's a cross-section you can see on the top left. It gives you an approximate idea where you are. This is through 1460, through the highest point of that particular site. Compass building is directly across from it. You can see they're approximately both around 200 feet, 195 or so. The site does drop off, or the grade does change as well, where the west side is a little bit higher, actually. depending on where you are through this whole rezoning section, and obviously where you are through the Compass site as well. I guess just in summary, the buildings are comparable in height, and like I said, the grade is actually a little bit lower on the east side. So it's I do believe it fits in the context of what's previously been built there and is currently existing.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And the comment,
other questions?
no, I'm sorry, the issue of apartment size and room size. Can you speak to that, please?
Sure, yes. Borough President Gibson did make a comment as to adding 4 bedrooms and increasing the number of 3 bedrooms. We've met with HPD. HPD was present at Borough President's public hearing on this. So we will follow the guidelines of the HPD program and work with the Borough President's office and advocating for and open to more 3-bedroom and larger size units.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I can't see your face at this moment, so I just want to make sure you don't have further questions.
I do not, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Those are all the questions for the applicant team. Thank you for being with us. We do have some members of the public wishing to testify, all of whom are joining us by Zoom. We're going to call them up one at a time. The first is Edmundo Martinez, to be followed by Elena Conte. So, Mr. Martinez, when you are ready, you can go right ahead for 3 minutes.
Yes, hello. Thank you. I was unable. Yes, hello. Thank you. I was unable to see folks due to the full share screen. I just wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you to everyone on the City Planning Commission. I want to acknowledge the person who stated that this isn't a true connection as of yet, how it is proposed. And I think a lot of these things here kind of highlight that there's a lot of things that are proposed but not fully cemented in, like that true connection. One of them being the overflow lot, stating that it's not accessible to the public, that is not 100% accurate. That overflow lot is used by the Bronx River Alliance, who works very closely with the public. I am one of those members of the public. I have lived in this neighborhood for over 3 decades and have chosen not to leave. One of the other components of this is the affordability aspect of it. The area median income is about $30,000 with about a $988 rent. The numbers that have been proposed so far and all the previous proposals, all are higher than those numbers. So, and with about 69% of the neighborhood population making less than $50,000. I want to also highlight the impact on the local parks, who are already struggling to maintain the cleanliness due to the lack of funding that the Parks Department gets. I think everyone here on the commission knows those kind of numbers. Starlight Park and Concrete Plant Park are overwhelmed, and it often requires the Bronx River Alliance to find volunteers and take their staff to clean up the park as best they can, which removes them from programming. Also, that approximately 900 and something units with 100 parking spaces, there will be an impact on transportation in the area, specifically the cycling infrastructure. Currently, there is a bike lane in front of the building. It is not fully protected, and the current folks who occupy that space use it as a parking lane, and it's not been enforced by the NYPD or DOT. And there are concerns that 900 plus units with 100 spaces, there will be significant increase of car usage in the neighborhood, and the district already is susceptible to a lot of vehicular collisions with pedestrians by bigvehicles. There are no supermarkets nearby to this development, the nearest ones being approximately half a mile away, 10 minutes or more of a walking distance. So if this was to move forward, some kind of dedication or commitment to having some type of market or green, accessible, fresh food, accessible to the neighborhood, as well as, speaking of dedicated space, a free dedicated indoor community space or space that is dedicated to the school, the Alliance, YMPJ, or the other people that the developers mentioned, but indoors, not just necessarily an outdoor space, which, you know, it will be susceptible to weather. Regarding the height, yes, the height is comparable. to neighboring development, but not its proximity to the river. The Bronx River is a corridor that is used by migratory birds.
Time.
Thank you very much. Why don't you finish that last thought, and then we'll call it a day here. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. So the Bronx River is used by migratory birds, and research to state that approximately 200,000 birds a year are killed by striking buildings, and having a building of such height along the river is an extreme concern, as well as the shadowing that it will cause to the river, which will affect aquatic wildlife. There's a lot more, but I'll send it in my written statement. Thank you.
Great. We would welcome that. Thank you very much for being here. We have a question for you from Commissioner Marin.
Edmundo, do you know if a shadow study has been performed? That's a very good question, because I was also concerned about the shadows it would cast on both Starlight Park to the southeast and to the new park up north that connects across the river with the new bridge.
I personally, as a constituent, have not been informed of a shadow study specifically by the developer. I do know that my relationship with the Bronx River Alliance, they have been concerned about the circadian rhythm, as well as the shadows causing issues from the migratory aquatic wildlife. I do not know any other agencies or organizations' stance on it, but my relationship and communications with the ecology team from the Bronx River Alliance has stated there are significant concerns regarding the shadows, as well as the height with the migratory birds.
Thank you, Edmundo. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your taking the time to be with us today. Thank you. We will now move on to Elena Conte, also on Zoom, to be followed by Lisa Sorin on Zoom.
Hi, good morning, Chair Garodnick and Commissioners. Can you all hear me?
Good morning.
I assume so. Hi.
Thank you for
thank you for the opportunity to testify. It's nice to see some names, because I can't really see your faces very well, that I haven't had the opportunity to interact with since pre-pandemic and my long tenure at the Pratt Center for Community Development. But I'm here today as the interim executive director of a relatively small but mighty community organization, the Bronx River Alliance, which is also a public-private partnership with the Parks Department that serves as the coordinated voice of the river. Formed by an assemblage of community-based do-it-yourselfers who started removing cars and tires from the river going back to the 1970s, with a structure that requires ongoing accountability with community groups. For more than 20 years, we have been the umbrella organization that supports communities along the river to manifest their dreams for it. And we have led in its protection, restoration, and connection. I'll give you stats on it in my written testimony about the level of engagement. We have many partners, but just to name just a few in this immediate area: Youth Ministries for Peace and Justice, the Point CDC, Intervine at the Hope Program, Fannie Lou High School, Rocking the Boat, Friends of Concrete Plant Park, Mary Mitchell, Banana Kelly, Friends of Soundview Park, Urban Health Plan. These are who we work with and serve as being the community, the coordinated voice. So we welcome investment in the river corridor when it serves to advance the goals and plans of surrounding communities, and we appreciate the proposal before you creates new waterfront access, is mixed use, and will hopefully include some deeply affordable housing. But unfortunately, in its current form, it falls too short of community goals while introducing some new concerns. And so this morning, we are urging the Commission to ask a lot of detailed questions during its review period to the developers, and to recommend modifications and commitments that would allow the project to more fully meet community needs. I'm going to speak to three things: housing affordability, environmental standards, and public value recovery. Quickly, housing affordability. I was surprised not to hear about Ella and the 15% set aside for homeless folks that is in the proposal. That's very important, because 48% of the surrounding community is in the extremely low income category that would require affordability levels not beyond 30% of AMI. We feel that the 120% AMI at the top of the income restriction is too high for the area's people and for the market at well. The median rent in the neighborhood is just over $1,000 a month. We would like the application to mix and match for that term sheet to limit the top of the band to 100% of AMI. That level, by the way, that we want you limited to is $141,000 a year for a family of four. You can do this without changing the term sheet. You can just keep going with your application, but make that commitment and limit it at 100%. Also, I'm very unclear if the developer is going to bank on keeping units vacant until the market catches up, because there's nowhere near 120% in the area. Environmental standards, we have a number of concerns. Stormwater.
Okay, just finish the thought. We know we've got written testimony coming, but you were mid-sentence. Why don't you see if you can just wrap up?
Okay. Okay. So
you know what? While you're thinking, hold on. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Your point about whether they intend to keep it vacant because there was nowhere near. I missed what you said. Can you just say it one more time, because it was a little quick and I didn't hear it or understand it.
Sure. I mean, I think that it is clear when I say that the median rent in the area right now, this is from the racial equity report that is required, right, is just over $1,000 per unit. That is nowhere near what 120% of AMI is, right? That for that level, it's like a $3,000 plus rent on a 2-bedroom, right? So it feels like the developer is banking on the market going way up and gentrification. And I don't think that even by the time this is built, the market will be anywhere close to it, because it is currently so far away. And so I'm just curious then what the developers would, do in that instance. Obviously, we don't want any vacant apartments just because folks are waiting for different market conditions. We want something that can serve the community. Okay,
got it. Thank you. Now, did you want to finish your other thought, and then we'll see if there are other questions?
Sure. So essentially, the devil is in the details, and the stormwater standard that's going to be met is very unclear. The green roofs that have been mentioned, we asked the developers directly in the walkthrough that they keep referencing, and they said, oh, actually, no, those aren't guaranteed. That's, sort of kind of for the renderings, and, we're not really sure what the design is at that point. So it's unclear what standard the developers are going to meet beyond the legal required standard and some porous pavers. This is the #1 source of pollution to the river, and we would like more detail and a more aspirational approach, right, that takes into account the actual climate reality, the actual conditions on the river, and employs different strategies, which have a whole range of prices, to get a much better retention rate than the DEIS indicates.
Great, thank you. We have a question for you from Commissioner Marin.
Actually, not a question, but sort of a clarification, and HPD should be making this clarification to you. There is no way that the developer can warehouse units and wait for a market to improve. And the reason why I say this is because this is all done by lottery. And as you know, currently, the lottery system provides for preference to 50% of that community board, which is 9, and of course, adjacent communities, which are 2 and 3. I do share your observation that our community, because I live here, is a community of about 30 to 40% AMI, but we've also heard comments from the children of those folks saying they have nowhere to qualify for, because once they become educated and make some money, they have to leave the community and they'd like to stay close to home. I understand the concern that the AMIs might be too high for the folks in this community, and the racial equity reports identify the current condition of the community and the racial disparities in the community. The idea here is that these buildings would be open and offered to all folks of New York City, affording folks affordable housing where there isn't, and the upper echelon of the AMIs are usually captured when you have 2 civic type individuals, a policeman, a teacher, that can then be housed in this building. So I understand those concerns. I just urge you to consider those as you make your observations. I also agree with you that in light of the current storms that have happened in our community, I am concerned with stormwater runoff and sewage systems, because we are putting 24-story buildings, 1,000 units, in places where our sewer systems were not designed for capacity. And we are experiencing in this community levels of flooding unbeknownst to anyone. I've been here 30 years. My basement got flooded on Sunday, another 4 inches. And at this point, I just can't keep anything down there. That's where I used to sleep. So I do understand those concerns, and I would like to know more from the development team as to what they are thinking about when it comes to this with the blue roofs, the green roofs, to mitigate some of that stormwater runoff. So Elena, thank you for bringing that out.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Elena. Good to see you. Thank you for being here with us. We are going to move on. Did you want to respond to that? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. If you had something to say.
No, it's okay. I wasn't sure if I'm allowed to respond, but
well, it wasn't really. I don't think there was really a question there. But go ahead, and if you have something to say in response, be our guest.
Well, I really appreciate Commissioner Mudding's comments about people who want to stay in the community and figuring out citywide what the right mix is for that. But I also just want to point out that in the racial equity report, it shows that housing production in this area has outpaced population growth in the area. And I think that there's just a lot of factors going on data-wise that we can dig deeper into to come up with the right answer for this community.
Thank you. Noted and taken.
Yeah.
Commissioner Marine, do you have any follow-up before I go?
No. I wanted to let her know that point is acknowledged and understood. And I do know that we're having to, somehow get to yes here and negotiate. So I really appreciate the consideration as we move along.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Kermani.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your testimony. At the end of your time, I heard 3 words, and I would just like a little bit more information on what you meant, which is public value recapture recovery. Can you just spend a few seconds, what did that mean?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Kermani. So the reason that this location is now desirable for housing is directly related to the park creation, the river cleanup, the maintenance, the programming, and the conversion of the Sheridan into a boulevard, which are all efforts that have been led and sustained by the low-income communities of color pursuing environmental justice in partnership with government. So they have created the land value now through a public land use action. That value is poised to accrue to the private landholders, we feel disproportionately, without sharing enough of that value back to the public. So we're asking that the developers redistribute that publicly created value. Again, it's a public action undertaken by public servants to bring it back to the public through improving the standards of development, through deeper and permanent affordability, context-appropriate environmental standards, and ongoing support for the assets that support the ongoing profit value of the site. The park is not well enough maintained. We just opened a new portion. This is going to bring more than 2,700 people. And those people, we're so happy, have a park to enjoy and will impact the maintenance needs of the park, which are already insufficient, right? So we are asking from you in your role as planners, stewarding the future well-being of our city's people and the environment that sustains them, for you to ask hard questions and, make the recommendations, recommend modifications to the greatest extent of both your technical and political powers, and to know that doing so will reap benefits far beyond the specific action.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Rampersad.
Actually, the question I had was pretty much answered just now. Because I know you had mentioned you had 3 points that you want to talk about: housing, environmental, and I believe this is the 3rd point that you were going to bring across. So thank you. Okay,
great. Thank you very much. And with that, we are now going to move on to the next person on our list. Thank you very much, Ms. Conte. Lisa Soren from the Bronx Chamber is up next, also on Zoom.
Good.
And whenever you're ready, you can get started. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, very good. Good morning, commissioners. I am Lisa Soren, president of the Bronx Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to discuss this project. The Bronx Chamber of Commerce, that represents over 27,000 businesses across our borough, really is focused on the economic development of our borough and its growth. The Bronx overall, in specifically towards the South Bronx, has seen an increase of entrepreneurship by 30%, meaning that, and this goes to a conversation that Commissioner Marin said about the development and the value that's coming into our borough. That particular site I'm very familiar with in all my years of working in the Hunts Point area that sits now, and if I'm not mistaken, almost like a brownfield. Considering the Sheridan is so absolutely beautiful with the new redevelopment and that park. The reason we are so wholeheartedly in favor of this project is manyfold. One of the biggest ones, which seems to be a concern, is the Simone partnership with the Parks Department and their commitment to green space and the care of green space, open space. Our offices are on a property for Simone, and their landscaping, their commitment to the environment is bar none, probably the best I've ever seen. Actually, we use it as an example across our borough on how property management, property owners should really promote and support and consider the surroundings of the projects that they put in. Also, the affordable housing, which is something that has been discussed consistently. And the fact that this is 100% affordable is something that speaks to the value that's being brought into the Hunts Point area, as the South Bronx Mott Haven is being challenged with a lot of high market value apartments. So this allows not only a beautiful site, but overlooking the water, having the green space, and having a property owner that values community and values open space. Added to that, as the chamber, what we're looking forward to is what the economic development comes from that, the retail spacing, the ability for others to put their locations, pop-up shops across that property. I know supermarkets were mentioned. It seems like the borough is being challenged by the lack of supermarkets. But we stand wholeheartedly behind this project on behalf of the chamber, on behalf of those residents and that area. I think that this is the beginning of a great story that can complete that whole section. When you drive by now, what you're seeing compared to what is coming is really deserves to be applauded. And I know that they're working very closely with the community. And my experience is that that's not going to change. If anything, their communication and their value and support of the community will only get better. And I appreciate the time you have allowed me to speak today.
Fine.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Soren. We appreciate your being here with us today. And I'm going to do a final call for members of the public or anybody who wants to come and testify. Would you like to come back?
Nope, no.
You're welcome. If you have something to say, we'll hear you. Go ahead.
We can just respond in
Go
comments.
ahead, please. Go right ahead.
We can respond in comments to the comments were made by the public, but thank you to the public and the commissioners for the discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Madam Secretary, we're going to close the hearing now on this item, calendar numbers 21 and 22. And I will ask you, Madam Secretary, if we have any more business before the commission. It looks like maybe we do.
I'll just note that the record will remain open on this matter through Monday, July 24th at 5 p.m. to receive written comments on the draft environmental impact statement, the DEIS.
Great. So record is open on calendars 21 and 22, but today's hearing is closed. So, and Madam Secretary, anything else? Any other items today?
No, Chair Grodnick. There is no other business before the commission, but I do have some public information to share. For those of you who are unable to or did not wish to testify, you can submit written testimony online by selecting this hearing on the upcoming meetings page of the NYC Engage portal, through DCP's website, or by mailing your comments to City Planning Commission, Calendar Information Office, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271.
Great. And with that, the time is now 12 noon, and we are adjourned. Thank you.